So now we'll take a look at if and only if. So I'm going to abbreviate this with the IFF, and that is the double arrow here. So again, we start with our P and the Q in our table. So then P, if and only if Q. So we start with our true for half, false for half, and then a quarter true, a quarter false. So if and only if is going to be true when both of these statements are the same truthhood. So what I mean by that is in the first two, let's say P is true and Q is true. So P is true if and only if Q is true. Well, that's a true statement because P is true and Q is also true. So if P is true, if and only if Q is true, that is true. When they have the opposites truthhood, then it's a false statement. So if we have true, if and only if false, well, then that's a false statement. Similarly, if we have false, if and only if true, that is also false. And then lastly, this one can trip people up. So you just have to remember that for if and only if, you have to have the same truthhood. So in this case, where we have false, if and only if false, then that's a true statement. Because if it's false, and the other statement's false, then overall, that's a true fact. So for if and only if, we just have to have the same truthhood. For if then, so this is just the single arrow. We have, again, start with our P and our Q. So this is P implies Q. So looking at this, if true implies true, that's a true statement. True implies false, then that's like saying if it's raining outside, then I didn't use my umbrella. So this is an example my professor used in college to help understand when this is a true statement. So if it is raining, so we're looking at this line here. If it is raining, then I didn't use my umbrella. So I got wet. So that's a bad thing. I don't want that to happen. So this is going to be false. This line here says, if it's not raining, then I use my umbrella. Well, I didn't get wet, so it doesn't matter. So this is true. And then similarly, it didn't rain, I didn't use my umbrella, I'm not wet, so that's a true statement. So if then can be really, really difficult for a lot of people, especially because the statements might not make total sense. But if you think of it in terms of the ultimate conclusion with the umbrella situation, if I got wet, then that's bad. But if I stayed dry, I didn't get rained on, then it's a true statement. So the only time that a if-then statement is false is if truth implies false. That's the only time it's going to be false. Every other time it's going to be true. So that's just something that we have to keep in mind. All right, so those are all of the logical connectives. And so now we are going to take a look at building the truth table for larger statements with multiple connectives. So let's take a look at that.